I've never played System Shock, largely given that the original game released in 1994 and I definitely was not around to experience it back then, so with the remake releasing back in 2023 I thought I'd finally get around to it. I was entirely unfamiliar with the game, so I wanted to look into it ever so slightly just to see what others thought about the game. And to my surprise I found that the bulk of the reviews were positive, highlighting that it pretty much is a true remake and stayed true to the original, so I was excited to play the game knowing it was well received for the most part. This review doesn't cover System Shock 2 as I was entirely unaware that it even existed even when doing my research at the start of this video, so this will exclusively cover the remake of the original System Shock. As always, before I continue, consider subscribing, it'll help me out as I continue to produce these reviews and work to create the content you guys want to see. If you'd like, also consider giving me more games to review. I'm open to covering all genres. As you can see so far, a lot of my content is quite diverse. Anyway, let me get back on topic. Immediately upon starting the game, you're thrown into a futuristic world and see the extent of how much has changed. The player also immediately gets confronted by the police, or I don't know, a government official, someone powerful. The game doesn't really elaborate at the start, so you kind of just have to determine that for yourself. However, you soon find yourself on a space station near Saturn, and so the game begins, and man, it is interesting to say the least. You have nothing, you have to find everything yourself, everything is out to get you, and you will likely die. Especially early on, I admittedly died a few times just getting my bearings, and I was caught off guard a few times. As much as the sound design is good, somehow most of the enemies will creep up on you out of nowhere. It starts almost like Subnautica, which is one of my favourite games of all time. Something happens to you and you find yourself alone and have to fight for every second of your life. Granted, both of these games have different circumstances. However, unlike Subnautica, I don't really find a reason to care about the world around me here. The game largely keeps you on levels early on, which is fine, but feels repetitive, especially after a while, although the change in vertical environments is a neat touch. Although it's kind of nullified as the different levels visually look very similar, it took until the 5th level for me to really see something different in environmental and level design, which I understand in the context of it being a remaster, but I think if there was a little more that would make each area stand out on its own, then I think it would be something I could be okay with. The game doesn't outright give you a way to track progress, instead you freely explore the levels and do what you can until you can progress, which I actually liked as it gives you so much more freedom compared to other single player games. In a change from my normal review process, I'm actually going to cover the positives first. As mentioned just a second ago, the non-linear nature of the game is great as you get to play the game without it holding your hand. It's a testament to your survival instincts and your persistence to push forward. I also think the actual depth to each level is quite good, but the environments, albeit looking similar, actually offer quite a bit and work towards building the atmosphere well. Additionally, each area is quite dense with collectibles, consumables, and areas where you can empty your inventory. Oh, and one of my favourite features this game has is that you can recycle your scrap and get paid for it, which was quite fun, although at times I felt like I either wasn't getting paid enough for the scrap I recycled, or the actual items for purchase are quite steep in price. I think the visual overhaul is fine, although I thought there was a really weird blend of high and low resolution textures, almost like some of the parts hadn't been rendered properly, or for that part at all, and to be honest I wasn't sure how I felt about it. It doesn't really make sense to me considering that much of the outside dystopian Earth looks so cool, and then here it's a really weird blend that sometimes looks rough. The weapon variety is good, although it felt like I was shooting enemies with Nerf bullets at times. I don't know if it's possible to check the weapon scaling and enemy health scaling as you move throughout the game, but yeah, it was definitely something. It felt sluggish until you unlock the laser rapier, and then it kind of picks up as you unlock other stuff around this time, which helps push the game to feel faster paced. Although I thought the actual range of melee weapons was undertuned, there were several times where I hit an enemy and it did not register because I practically wasn't inside of them, which was a shame, but I think the game primarily plays through gunplay. The boss fights are alright, but where you find them in the game, I thought they provided ample challenge, but for the reason that they do so much damage, and considering that health items can be pretty scarce, you may find yourself doing the same fight multiple times. I also thought that some of the health scaling of later bosses was a bit much, even when using an optimal setup, although the final boss was very easy. I definitely did not get them stuck accidentally and kill them safely. One thing I thought was really fun was the little puzzles that the game included. These are placed around areas that need repairing or require specific interactions. The circuit and wire panels I thought were excellent and provided a brief moment of relief between stressfully finding a way around the world, although there was like a big chess game, think like Harry Potter where it's life-sized, which I did not do because I've never played chess. Apparently you get rewarded for doing that, so that's quite cool. The cyberspace hacking game was a little contentious, and many reviews I saw online also shared the same sentiment, with some people suggesting that it shouldn't have even been included at all. I somewhat disagree. I think it's mostly fun and visually very cool, but my two main faults of it lie in the camera, as it's unbearable and you can get so disoriented, and that some of the areas are so overloaded in enemies when you're in such a confined space, which largely results in dying and can become somewhat frustrating. However, I think it's just another case of persevering, because as a whole I think I enjoyed it more than some of the main game levels. And with that, I think I can move over to my faults with the game, and there are a few to say the least. Let's get the big one out of the way first. The performance of the game is weird, and I don't know if I can put it any other way. Just pay attention to the next clips in the background, because this happened with pretty much every enemy that wasn't the machine. As a game that excels in level design and immersion, I thought the way that objects collided and bodies were clipping through all surfaces when they shouldn't was immersion breaking. This game is at its best when you're absorbed in it, and having stuff like this going on around you just ruins that. I found it took away from the mystique of the world, and I just couldn't take it as seriously as maybe I should have. Now, I know that maybe I'm expecting too much, and that's entirely possible, but for a game that's £35 or nearly $50, I'd expect a bit more polish and refinement with regards to this sort of stuff. Oh, and there's also this really infuriating glitch that happened to me whenever I died. In the process of respawning, I would die before I even got out of the respawning animation, which took fucking forever by the way. It does all this code stuff on the screen, which is entirely for aesthetic purposes, but like by the time that's done, I already want to carry on just for me to die and to go through it all again before I could run around. Another flaw, which I think is more of a fundamental game design flaw than something I experienced, was that the game tells you next to nothing. While this is good in terms of exploration for the non-linear playstyle, it's incredibly frustrating as there are so many areas that are locked behind codes, and you have to explore every nook and cranny, listen to every voice recording just to probably forget the code by the time you make it over to the actual keypad. I mean, thankfully you can just listen to all the recordings in your mini tab, but it goes to show that the bulk of the collectibles really have no relevance to the story, as there are only a select few that are necessary, and the rest tries to get the player to care about what's going on in the world, but it just doesn't deliver very well. Most emotions on display in these voice things just feel flat, but oh my god was this a big burden, and unfortunately it just drags the game out a little longer than what I think it should really cover. I saw that other reviews also shared the same complaint, with most people even going as far as to take notes for this game, which I think is a bit much. I mean, the idea is good, testing the player's memory in between so much conflict and exploration, but the actual execution of it is, in the nicest way possible, just shit. I'm all for games not holding your hand throughout the entire playthrough, but this game doesn't even offer you a hand, it just kicks you in the shin. Unfortunately, it gets to the extent that you will almost certainly get lost and or frustrated during your playthrough, and either spend hours going through every item you've collected to find a single thing that pushes you in a direction. Before you know it might not even be the right one, or you fold and give into searching online for what to do. But once you do that, you immediately decide to do that for anything else just because it's so much easier. Oh, and one more little thing. Just because you don't get told anything, do not throw away any items unless it's junk. Otherwise, you have to do the same thing I did and spend 2 whole hours, no I'm not joking, just looking for a single item because the game doesn't tell you it's important. I already know I said my piece on the optimization of the game, but there were several instances, or more accurately, every time I used an elevator, there were visual imperfections, whether it be on the weapon you're holding or whatever, or the door of the elevator would have the shadows clip and interfere with the rendered door, which irked me a little more than what I thought it would. Unfortunately, I think that for a game that relies so heavily on immersion to keep the player hooked, it's really easy to become disengaged with the gameplay loop. Now, I'm not saying that the game is bad by any means, I actually think it's quite good. I thought the story begins to pick up partway through, and Showdown, the antagonist, begins to show more desperation and becomes more cynical as the player progresses through each level. However, I felt like there was no real urgency with the story. We have all these threats of action from Showdown, and you have all the time in the world to explore around, get lost, and tamper with the plans. To wrap this video up, I think the game is good. It has appeal to its core audience, but from an outside perspective looking into the game for the first time, it can be quite uncomfortable to experience. I almost found that I had to force myself to get through the game, which I wanted to do for a very long time, so I was a little disappointed with that. The action on display is fine, it's definitely immersive, so if you're into that sort of stuff, I'd absolutely recommend the game. And it takes a good amount of time to play through in its entirety. For me it's about 20 hours total, but I think the critiques I've mentioned have stopped me from enjoying it as much as I could have. As always, thank you for watching until the end of the video. If you haven't already, consider subscribing and turning post notifications on. Even leave a like or a comment for a game for me to play. Happy New Year, and hopefully I'll see you for the next video.